Welcome to 8 Cubes. I am a newly beardless KMBest. He is Lambie Series, and we are really damn good at Marvel Snap, and we want you to be too. So let's get started with the most obvious jumping off point. Lambie, Werewolf by Night.
Oh my gosh, this card. So I would like to first apologize to all the people that I thought it was gonna be an okay card. It's not an okay card. It's a way above okay card. Like honestly, this card I feel like it's severely overtuned in the sense that like I think not just me, but like most people that have asked like, hey, what's your average werewolf stats on turn 6? They say it's like, oh, 311, 313, like that's the normal. Like it's that's actually normal, like without trying. It's like 311, 313. So that's crazy. And I've done 319 very often as well. If I'm playing, like if I draw all my one cost on review. So this card I feel is difficult to use because like at the end of the day, it's a lot of mobility and you have limited board space. But I think once people get used to like this card, they will be able to maneuver it appropriately. And when you can maneuver this appropriately, it's very scary because your opponent will never know, right? Like I've played so many games whereby like I'll be like, okay, if they move the werewolf here, I'm dead. If they don't move the werewolf here, I'm dead on the other lane. So will they move the werewolf? And like there's so much space. And what if they move it twice? You know, that kind of thing. What do you think, KM?
Werewolf by Night is an extremely powerful card. And I will offer, I guess, clemency to people who were like, I don't really see it with this card, because it's very easy not to see it with this card if Elsa is still giving +3, because it doesn't really go with Elsa, right? It is a fine card, but it doesn't really go there, right? It can be mixed with Elsa, but even in the decks where you play both of them, you kind of have to pick one. And because of that, you would almost always rather have Elsa giving +3 than invest in Werewolf by Night. But then they nerfed Elsa. Now Elsa gives +2. And right now, I think Werewolf by Night is a stronger card than Elsa. And so that means that it sort of takes precedence. And I think the lesson I would like people to take from this is stat sticks only matter as long as they're the biggest stat stick, right? Like if you're playing a card that is an understated an overstated undercosted beater, and your opponent is playing a card that is even more understated and overcosted, well, they have an advantage, right? And so only the top end of stat sticks see play. I don't think people evaluating Werewolf are necessarily wrong because it wasn't the top end of stat sticks, but it is now. And I think that's the thing that I want to point out is just how fast context changes in this game, because I've had the same experience with Werewolf where it's just like, oh, this is just better than Elsa. Like, this is just a better card than Elsa. You're getting more out of it. You're investing very heavily. And also, it's very difficult to play. One further thing I wanted to point out is that when you look at the win rates for it, they're actually like pretty low. And I think that's because it's so hard to play, because it's an undeniably powerful card, but it's quite difficult to use properly. It's quite difficult to plan your turns out, and it requires you to plan your turns out in terms of, all right, I'm going to want to move it here, so I need to not put a third thing here, because then I won't be able to move it here. I need to know that on turn 4 instead of like on turn 6. I think it's the kind of card that will be better in 2 months than it is right now, and I think it's already good right now. I would draw a comparison to Silk, where not necessarily in terms of power, but in terms of how long it takes for people to like get it, right? I do think that it might be accelerated because I think more people picked up Werewolf than Silk, and I think he is immediately better than she was. But it's going to be the same kind of thing where like at some point we're going to look back at this and be like, how was this card okay releasing as it is? I think the more I play with it, the stronger I feel like it is.
Yeah, I just want to add one last thing, which is like I completely agree with the whole Silk like reference, because really this card is like it's only really lower on win rate because it just needs time for people getting used to it, right? Like I feel like even myself personally, when I play this card, I was like, wait a minute, I realized I shouldn't put too many things here, I shouldn't put too many things there. But it's not intuitive, you know? It's like
hard.
It's really something that needs to come with time. And I think, like you said, maybe 2 months, 1 month, I don't know, but definitely not now.
Yeah. It's a hard card to play, and it does restrict your deck building in some real ways, right? Like you want to be doing some very specific things that are not the same things that other decks might want to be doing. One of the things about the old Elsa Loki deck was it all wanted to be doing the same thing. Elsa, Angela, Kitty, Jeff, you wanted to be doing the same thing, right? And now that's not true anymore. There's a significant divergence in your game plans. And I actually got to the point where I cut Elsa entirely. So Loki, I think we both agree, after the change to Mobius and Mobius is just sort of, there's no real excuse for you not to be playing Loki. We have two differing approaches to it. I focused a little bit more heavily on making sure my Quinjet high roll was in there. You made more of a bounce deck with Forge and Beast, but both of us sort of zeroed in on, we play Werewolf, it's the biggest stat stick. We play Loki because it's unfair. And that's sort of where we started with this metagame, and that seems to be where the metagame is sort of staying right now, for me at least. What are your thoughts on the specifics of Loki builds, how each of them perform in the mirror, and so on?
Well, so I feel like at the end of the day, Loki is currently the best deck in the game, which includes Werewolf, simply because it's the deck that does the most unfair things in general, right? Like, so just gonna list it out very quickly. Loki is energy, cheat, stat sticks are Werewolf, Collector, flexibility with like Beast, Falcon, at least for my build, and like just a lot of rolling stats and a lot of like alternate game plan potentials, right? The Elsa game plan, the Werewolf game plan, the Collector Loki game plan, and it's adaptable based on matchup. I feel like this deck is like it grows with you. Like the more you get involved into the game, the more you will know how to do things with Loki. So I think like Loki, in a sense, like whether you build it like from KM's angle, like the Quinjet, my energy cheat, one big Loki and just spam all the stuff angle, or my angle whereby you bounce stuff back, you replay them for like additional bonuses here and there. I feel like at the end of the day, regardless of which angle you go, Loki is a deck that really grows with you. It sounds so philosophical and whatever, but like honestly, it really does grow with you, because the more you experience matchups, the more you experience
Yeah.
your opponent's game plan. You just play better because you know what's up. That's what I can say.
Yeah. I will say, I think my build of the list is significantly easier to play, which is a legitimate selling point and is not
Very
honestly sacrificing that much power, if at any
true.
at all. Like, I actually feel like my build of the list is like, it's like for dummies. You want more free wins, you can play this. And like if you wanna like really invest in high effort gameplay for, and I'm serious, and I'm sorry when I say this, I don't actually know if it's more reward if you play your way, because losing Quinjet is really tough. But if you like taking game actions, Lamby's list is definitely gonna appeal to you. Like if you like having 27 decisions, and I know that sounds derogatory, but there are people who love that. I am normally one of those people. Like if you like just like feeling really smart, Lamby's list is going to make you feel so smart when you figure it out. It is like putting together a puzzle that you don't know how to do. It is kind of an adrenaline rush to play, to be completely honest with you. My list is just like, I'm going to do as many unfair things as I possibly can. Very much like deck building for dummies. That's pretty much it. Like, I don't want to have to think about stuff. I'm just going to be unfair, and hopefully that'll take me home. Loki, still a problem. Let's talk about a deck that people play, but I'm not sure why, and that is Darkhawk. It is my contention that after the nerf to Mobius and Mobius, Darkhawk got like some amount of totally unplayable, and that's mostly because of the Loki matchup, where it's just like, yes, I'm a Darkhawk deck, I play efficient threats, and then the Loki player plays Loki, and they're like, yes, now I'm a Darkhawk deck, and I play more efficient threats. And like that's sort of the issue with Loki as a card, which is just like he has this sort of ability to completely dominate any sort of mid-range deck, because mid-range decks are sort of by definition built around efficiency, the ratio of energy to points that you get, or energy to effect. And when Loki's you, he just does what you do, but better. And that especially crushes mid-range decks, which tend to be built in such a way where they're not that finicky. They're not like, oh, I need these specific cards in this order. That's actually the strength that they have, is their consistency. And so when you're a deck that's built to consistently do a thing, and then you play against a deck that does the thing you do but better, you kind of always lose. And Darkhawk is, unfortunately, in my opinion at least, back in that position. What are your thoughts on the big DH?
Well, I feel like Darkhawk is one of those cards that people just love to play. Like in any meta, any shape or form, anytime, people want to try and make it work. Like me personally as well, because I like the variants of the card. But like now, Ravonna has changed. Ravonna is a 2/1 right now, and there are some builds, right, that like go with the very all in on the whole Ravonna thing with like Darkhawk, Mystique, Iron Man. I don't think that's actually That's not too bad. But the problem is, like you said,
Agree.
you play all these kind of things which are like good in your deck, and then Loki just slams the Loki on the board, and like they play 2 turns worth of your turns in 1 turn, and like
Mhm.
that's too much to handle in a 6 turn game like Marvel Snap. So like Darkhawk is very weirdly positioned right now because like it did get better in terms of like energy cheat and in terms of like I
Yes.
guess yeah, in terms of like being able to like vomit stats and all that. But like the thing is because it did get better because Mobius was slightly like pushed to the wayside. Loki also got better because Mobius was pushed to the wayside. And then, Loki is originally already the better deck. And I mean, with Loki coming up on top, we'll talk about this a bit later. Thanos is also slightly going to be dropping down a little. So, I mean, Darkhawk's popularity shouldn't stay at an all-time, shouldn't stay high for much longer, in my opinion. Like, we'll be trying it, hoping it works, realizing it doesn't work, and then go back to good old Loki.
Darkhawk is so weird because like throughout Marvel Snap, there have been decks that like people just hang on to long after they're actually good.
Like Surfer.
Yes. Although I actually think Surfer is kind of close right now. I'm not gonna
Yeah, he's
lie.
decent
Like
now.
Surfer's like
Decent
kind of
now.
close. Like it's just finicky enough that if a Loki's you, you can be like, well, what if they just got crap, right? What if they just got like a bunch of awful stuff, right?
I mean, Loki and
just
Werewolf are
finicky
3
enough.
costs.
Yes. Well, not anymore. Loki's not anymore. Werewolf is though.
Oh, right.
Werewolf
Werewolf.
Surfer is like almost the deck. I'm serious when I say this. It's like
Yeah,
almost
yes.
the deck, but like
Almost.
it's not there yet, but like it could be in the future. And I think like the issue that a deck like Darkhawk has is it is fundamentally built around there's a certain type of person that likes a Darkhawk deck because you get to do the same thing every game. You get to play your consistent game plan. And I think that's what gives it the longevity that it has. But if there is something in the meta like Loki, you are generally just better avoiding that matchup entirely. Let's talk about Thanos, who I personally think after 1 week of being really good is now deader than a doorknob, because the issue that Mobius solved for the deck was not just that, okay, now we can actually win when they Loki us. It's also that it forced all of the Loki decks to take Quinjet out. And Quinjet Loki was the best possible thing you could be doing against a Thanos deck before Mobius came out, before you had to be afraid of that as a Loki gamer. Now it's back and you have no counterplay and they Quinjet Loki you and you're just like, oh, I just lost the entire game. That is a 3 energy devil dinosaur. I am instantly dead. And I can we revert the Soulstone nerf again? Can we go back to that? can we get my boy some help, please? Jesus Christ. Where are you at on this?
I mean, okay, so actually, I think last week I said that like Thanos was like good, right? Like now I still think it's decent because like yes, it's a horrible Loki matchup, that's for sure. Let's get that out of the way. But like they still, I mean, okay, the Quinjet scenario is one scenario, but like if they Loki you on 4, at least it's not like Loki on 3 into Prof X on 4. That was like the past, right? Loki on 3 into Prof X on 4. Now it's still like slightly delayed in a sense. I don't think Thanos will be back on top now because like you said, really Loki is just too potent. But I don't think it's dead. I don't actually think Thanos is dead. I feel like Thanos still has this thing going for them versus like a lot of the decks, which is the Time Stone or Psylocke on turn 3, into the cheat on turn 4, or like 5 cost on turn 4. Especially into Destroy, right? Like against Destroy, you have like Prof X on turn 4. And like you just set up into the easiest Alliance of your life. I think that's like the general game plan of Thanos, which is why people still love the deck. That's why I don't think it's actually like dead. But of course, with Loki being the top dog right now, it's never gonna be like the king because Loki just farms it.
Yep. So a couple of changes in the most recent patch that caught my eye were the change to Wave and the change to Sandman. I saw a lot of people saying like, oh man, a lot of people are playing Sandman decks right now. And I got to tell you, I don't understand why. I think a lot of people see Sandman and they're like, I get it. If I ramp this out, I can beat a Loki. But the issue is you can't, because they get your deck and then play your big guys and then you die. And I guess I just am continually surprised at the ways in which Loki punishes a deck for being good. Where, like, with Sandman, it's like, oh man, that's really tough. On the other hand, Wave, I'm not saying she got buffed, but Wave is now a really interesting card. Like, you look at Galactus decks that already wanted to take priority to guarantee the Galactus goes off, right? Like, suddenly, Wave is a 3/5. Much bigger, much more able to win those priority tiebreakers. A really interesting situation, in my opinion. And Wave is like that's the kind of card that in a fairer metagame would be a very powerful card. We're just not in that fair metagame yet. What are your thoughts on, the reshuffling of the anti-board flood cards here in Marvel Snap?
Right, I think I'm gonna look at this from like a literal numbers angle, because like I also thought Sandman had a bit of hope, so I went to experiment a little bit just to see how it went. So Sandman went +1 stats, Wave went +2 stats, so that's like so-called +3 stats to the deck, right? In a sense. But then they released Werewolf, and if you think about it, right, Werewolf. So I literally had this physical experience whereby like I was testing a Sandman deck, someone played a Werewolf against me, 4, 5, 6. Literally on turn 4, 5, and 6, they played like 1 or 2 cards, and the Werewolf was like 3/9, 3/11. And I'm like, wait, even if they play 1 card, there's a 3/9 running around. And like that's just the 3/9. Like you don't fight that, even with +3 stats in the Sandman deck. So I'm just like, this Werewolf came at the most interesting time, because they buffed the Sandman stuff and the Wave stuff. And then they introduced Werewolf for the like early mid-range decks, which totally destroys the late game potential of the Sandman deck because it's too slow. I do think that the Wave change is still good in a sense. Like, it's a straight up ramping tool right now.
Yeah.
Like, it's straight up a ramping tool. And it's a ramping tool with a stat stick. Like, it's a sort of stat stick ramping tool. 3/5 is pretty good.
Good numbers, yeah.
Yeah. So I really think like it's like good that it's just now a ramping tool of sorts, and it has a certain number of stats. Just that I feel like Sandman decks specifically are too slow. Like, if you can make like a Sandman control deck instead of like ramp, you just go like stat stick, like priority, and then you play Sandman on 5. That might even just be better, right? Like, you go like all the little guys, and then you just play a Sandman on 5 while you have already stats on the board to lock out the board. That might be better than going for like reverse stats, like ramp into Doom Odin. Yeah. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I can see that. I don't think that's ever gonna happen on the basis that it has never happened, but it is like something to think about at the very least. All right, next up, when we were coming up with topics for this, Lambie was like, oh my god, you have to put Destroy on here. So many people are playing Destroy right now. Destroy, I think, is in a slightly worse spot than it was before the patch. Not like because of anything specific, just like Killmonger was really good because there was a bunch of Thanos around. Now it is slightly less good, although there are still plenty of decks. Most of our Loki decks seem to be relying on 1-cost cards. It's still a good card. But also, I think that specifically, I think a lot of people are overreacting. They're saying, oh, Death is unbanned now because Mobius is gone. And it's like, we were already playing Death because we had Lady Deathstrike. Like, it was already unbanned because Lady Deathstrike allowed that to work again. And so I don't think that this deck gained anything from the patch, as weird as that may sound, because like, oh yeah, Mobius is gone. But like, we actually, in the previous iterations of the deck, we wanted them to be counting on Mobius and then blow it up so that they can no longer count on it on the critical turns of the game, gaining some cube equity. Now, they know they can't count on it because it doesn't do anything anymore because no one plays the card. And it's like, I guess I just think that a lot of people are going to look at this patch and be like, yeah, buff Destroy. And it's like, no, Destroy was this good before the patch, for sure. Like, it was a good deck.
All right, so the thing about Destroy is like, I want to just say that like I'm glad that I'm annoyed by the fact that there's so many Destroy around, because I feel like, firstly, Destroy is one of those decks that like, I mean, it's good that more people are playing it because of like, it's just an impression thing, right? Like, Mobius became worse, so Death equals good. Like people look at it that way, which is not exactly wrong, but we've been doing it already, like I said. But anyway, so Destroy is one of those decks that I feel like in Conquest, I kind of rather play against Destroy on Conquest, even though it's like semi better in Conquest because of like locational RNG and stuff, right? But I still rather play against Destroy in Conquest because you get a chance for them to brick more. On ladder, it's like if they draw good and then you play Loki and you don't grab the null, you're just like, oh no, there's nothing.
Isn't that just the perception thing though? Like, isn't that?
It is.
Yeah, okay, because like over the course of however many Destroy games, it kind of ends up the same, right? Like,
yeah, it's just a perception thing. It's just that it feels better to have multiple chances, but then again, it's just the same. It's just like it's the
same.
Yeah, I know, but it's just when you play Loki, I guess because I love Loki. When I play Loki, I actively look to try and play Loki and grab their null. And when I don't
Yeah.
grab their null, I'm like, all right, now I need to play the destroy deck on turn 5 when they've already done it on turn 3. The Venom stuff that they did on turn 3, I gotta do it on turn 5. So I'm just like,
Yeah.
oh no.
And then
It's
it makes their
basically
null bigger and it makes their death cheaper. And you're like, oh God, this sucks.
yeah, you gotta grab those. You literally only want the death and the
Yep.
null so that you can like just you can like reap the hard reap like benefit of the hard work that they've done
Yep.
just by grabbing their biggest cards. But it doesn't always happen. So I try to Loki with like a 6 card hand if possible. But yeah, like I said, it doesn't always happen.
I've got a theory. Okay. I've got a conspiracy theory. And here's my theory. My theory is that bounce is good into Loki. My theory is that bounce is good in general right now. And I can't figure out exactly how to play bounce right now because whenever I look at a deck, it's like, okay, I need 14 cards. Like, I need to be playing 14 cards. I need like 4 1-drops. I need Beast Falcon. I need Angela. I need Bishop. I need Mysterio. I need Hitmonkey. I need Chavez. Do I want to play Werewolf by Night? Do I want to play a 5th 1-drop? Do I want to cut Falcon? Do I want to play Iron Man? Am I playing Bast? There's so many cards that I have to play in this deck. Oh, do I want to be a Darkhawk deck? Then I got to put Korg in here. Can we play Iceman again now that Mobius is gone? Do we want to play like there's just so much crap that we have to think about now. Do we play Jeff? Can we play Jeff? Do we have to play Jeff? Is Jeff just too good to cut from any deck ever? Can we cut Angela? There's so much crap in this deck. But the main premise for why it's good is things that are good against Loki, and this applies to Loki mirrors as well, are decks that get their engines down early, and that when Loki plays Loki, doesn't get the same value out of those engines, right? So we talked about that with respect to Destroy. It's how Phoenix Force applies as well, because like Loki will get a hand that's just like a bunch of garbage. And that applies, like Sarah is another archetype that works that way, where your setup cards, your Angela, your Bishop, all that stuff, they need to be on the board before, turn 5, turn 6, and the earliest their opponent is going to be able to play them, even as a Loki gamer, is turn 5, turn 6. And so because of that, you end up in a situation where you have a deck that I think is actually pretty reasonable into Loki. But the issue I keep running into is I can't build it. Like, I can't get it to 12 cards. I can never do it. I was talking to Yo Woody about it, and he was like, oh, dude, just cut Chavez. So I wanted to run that by you. Do you think that's ever a sane thing to do? Like, can we ever actually cut Chavez from a bounce deck? Or is it just like, no, that's not sane. You can't do it. Sorry, dude. Because, like, the way I got it down to is, like, we either cut Chavez or we cut Jeff or we cut Angela. And it's like, none of those are things I want to do. None of those are things I want to be doing.
Right. So I want to agree on one very strong point that you mentioned, which I think the crux of like beating Loki that's been going around so far is that like Loki thrives on like pre-built engines, right? Like that's why when you Loki a Thanos deck, it's just a Dino, a Blue Marvel, a Prof, a Lyeth, all for cheaper, no effort needed. You just grab the big boys. But like if you are playing against Bounce, you're playing against Destroy, you're playing against Phoenix Force, all the stuff you grab from them is like setup pieces that have not been set up yet. So like Angela's a 2/2, Bishop's a 3/1, Collector's a 2, not Collector, but like you get the point. Like these cards are not built up yet, which is why it's bad technically to Loki into those cards. But yeah, no, firstly, then again, I don't think we should be cutting Chavez because it hurts the consistency of your own deck in general. I mean, like you can argue that you don't give them a 5/9 Chavez, but is that really an argument? That's like copium thinking, right?
It's just that I can't fit the cards in. Like, I can't fit the cards
so
in.
Hear me out. Like, so in the second topic, we talked about our two different builds of Loki, right? One thing that I don't know if you noticed that I actually already did was that my Loki deck is a bounce deck. It's actually a bounce deck.
It's a bounce deck. It's a bounce deck. Yeah, I saw the Forge. I got it. I know what you're doing. Yeah,
it's basically what we are talking about right now. I haven't talked about it like publicly, but this is the first time I'm talking about it. But what we just discussed, like the way I built this deck and why it works in the mirror is because when they Loki you, right, they get a bunch of like, oh shit, I have no space to play stuff.
It's just garbage.
But it works for me because I set it up already. That's basically
that's the exact thing I did, right? It's the same exact concept where it's just like, I'm gonna get this werewolf out now, then I'm gonna Loki you, and then whatever you have in there is probably better for me.
I've played already.
Enjoy my Falcon. Have fun,
so
dude.
I think final point is on the bounce note. I do think that a dedicated bounce deck can still be good against Loki. Like if you go in the same direction of what we were talking about, which is like imagine giving them a Mysterio when they only have like 2 board spaces left. Like
Yep.
they can't do that. Imagine giving them a Bishop at 3-1 on turn 5. Like they can't do anything with that. So
Yep.
like yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. In that vein, I guess we don't want to give them Iron Man, so
Nope.
there's something that we gotta think about
Yep.
in the context of building a good bounce deck for the meta.
Finally, we just wanted to cover some things here. A lot of people ask, and I'm sure they ask you, but God, do they ask me? When I post the deck list, they're like, "Oh, is this good in Conquest?" or "Oh, is this good on Ladder?" And I want to tell you, overall, those are the same things, right? Like, what is strong regardless. The main difference between the two modes is you can get away with more cheese on Ladder, where in Conquest, if you try to cheese somebody, they'll figure out you're cheesing them, and then they'll be like, oh, I just need to snap when they're not doing the thing, right? And that ends up a little bit harder to deal with in Conquest. I can think probably one meta ever was there a marked difference in Conquest matchups versus Ladder matchups, and that is when people were using Wave to stop bounce decks. That's probably the only time where I can think of like a severe gap between how a matchup worked in Conquest and how a matchup works on Ladder. Because on Ladder, it's, even after a certain point, that sort of percolated down to Ladder, where it's just like, I'm just going to play my guys on turn 5. Your Wave doesn't do anything, even if you do have it, right? Like, I don't get punished that much for doing it. But that deck building innovation that arrived at, things like Iron Man, right? In order to combat that, in order to facilitate those early plays of turn 5 Monkey, that is kind of the only time it's ever actually happened, and happened because of Conquest being a little bit different. Since then, I genuinely, I can't think of a single time where the best deck on Ladder has not been the best deck in Conquest as well. And I think people sort of overthink how it works. Like, there are some nuances to it, but by and large, to me at least, they're the same thing.
Actually, even more so in this current meta, like right now, where Loki is the best deck. I think Loki is like universally best in like Conquest and Ladder, because like on Ladder, on Ladder it's just like, even if you don't know what they're playing, even if you don't know what scams they're playing, you can slam a Loki on the floor, you can see, and then go from there. If not, you retreat.
Yeah.
On Conquest, it's like you get to play against the same person like multiple times. The moment you see once what they're playing, you just, like, if you're proficient at the game, you just plan out the entire rest of the match and like, all right, when I need to Loki, do I Loki here? What I need to steal? How much stats do I need to set up? That kind of stuff. Like, you just plan. So like in this current meta where Loki is like the top dog, like he's the top dog in like both formats, I'm quite sure. Want to add a little bit about like, I was having this discussion with Torikun the other day about Ladder specifically. It's like you really get away with a lot of nonsense on Ladder, right? Because like at the end of the day, like you were talking about like we could play a literal complete tech deck on Ladder, like a Sarah tech with everything dot deck on Ladder and scam 8 cubes. But in Conquest, you can't really do that, because like once they see your tech one time, your extremely low powered deck with all tech doesn't get away with scams anymore, because it's there's no surprise anymore, right? So I think like Ladder surprise factor is super important. Like if you literally, like, just gonna randomly run a random example, like on Ladder, if you play Shuri Sauron and you have a Shang-Chi in your Shuri Sauron deck, right, you're gonna get away with 8 cubes.
Yes.
So often.
You're gonna scam people with that. Yes.
So
the value of, God, I always associate this stuff with Wobolos, because he always played Claw. And you'd always just lose to the Claw and just be like, what the fuck plays that, right? Like, the value of one bullshit card is so much higher on Ladder.
Yes.
Just one Omega scam card is so much higher. Anything that isn't expected. But that goes within the context of, hey, like, don't deviate from playing good decks for the sake of surprise.
Yes. Like, play a good deck, but you can change one card for like a surprise card. Like, like I said, Shang-Chi in Shuri Sauron, or like in Loki, you play, I mean, like in the context of now Loki mirrors, right? You play one absurd tech, which I don't know, just something that no one expects you to play. Play Killmonger in your Loki or something, and just you will get
play around it. Yeah,
exactly.
All right. That's going to be it from us today here at 8 Cubes. Wish Lambie luck on his climb to rank 1. Wish me luck on my D climb to rank 69. I got a little bit too high again. I'm working on it. Thank you so much for watching. As always, I have been KMBest. He has been Lambie Series. Take us out, buddy.
And we will see you guys real soon. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe below. See you guys next time.